One Piece is one of the greatest mangas of all time, which means there is a lot to live up to. So when it comes to the live action adaptation, is One Piece worth watching? Welcome back, everyone. I have been on this amazing One Piece journey lately. I initially wanted to watch season 1 of the live action, and I was told by a friend, you need to read the manga first. So I've been doing that. If you haven't seen my videos, I've been talking about the manga and my thoughts on it. We talked about East Blue. I've read all of that. And so finally, I was like, you know what? It's time. I'm gonna jump into the live action. I said, season 2's coming and I really want to watch it. I love my boy, Tony Choppa. So let me get into season 1. And finally, I have finished. So I am here to tell you my thoughts and if I think that other One Piece fans need to watch this or simply should just stay away from it. Personally, I think the approach to the live action adaptation is really smart because basically what they decided to do here was they decided to give us almost like an abridged or condensed version of the story. This is ultimately Oda revisiting the story, reworking it, and knowing everywhere that it's going, finding a way to bring everything together so that it flows a little bit more cleanly as one cohesive thread or through line. And even though it is a condensed version, I still think it manages to capture those beautiful high notes of some of the story arcs and really embody a lot of the emotion that we felt when we first read One Piece or when we first watched One Piece, if you happen to be a fan of the anime. And that is something that I think is a huge success when it comes to this adaptation. Now, granted, it doesn't have everything in it because of that. That is the only thing. When you try to condense something, there are going to have to be cuts. And unfortunately, they did cut some of my favorite characters, namely Gaimon, Django, Momu, and even my boy Hachi. Although at least we got the Smek Fishman guy. We still got him and we still got his fight with Usopp. But the Hachi and Zoro fight, where was it? That being said, I think with everything that they did do, they did a great job of showcasing some of these really big and important story moments, to the point that some of them are even like 1-for-1 with the manga. I could not believe it. For example, when Nami asks Luffy for help when they're back at Cocoa Village, that is a scene that is a 1-for-1, I'm pretty sure, from the manga. Adapting that to the screen in that way, I was amazed. And the crazy thing is, it actually translates so well. The amazing thing with the One Piece live action adaptation is it really understands the importance of visuals and how manga and comics, for example, are very visual mediums. Film and TV, also a visual medium. So it feels a little weird to say in 2026 that I'm impressed that a TV show understands visuals and the importance of that. But unfortunately, as time has been moving on, I feel in film and TV we've kind of moved away from the power of visuals because there are so many people that watch things on autopilot. Like they'll watch a TV show while they're doing something else, so they're not actually absorbing it fully. So instead of showing us stuff, a lot of the times they tend to just tell us things and they'll actually like dictate what's happening on the screen so that you can listen and not miss it. But one of the things that I love about this show is that it really does focus on the power of visual storytelling. And this is, I think, perfectly exemplified in the way that we showcase these 1-for-1 scenes that happen from the manga to the screen. And it's crazy that it works as well because some of those moments are very heightened dramatically. And I was a little nervous going into it thinking, I mean, how are we going to do this? Luffy is such an odd character. So how are you going to make him believable and make him likable and all of that in live action? Will that take away from who the character is? Will they be forced to change things? But I think the reason that it works is because the acting here is so good. And even beyond that, just everyone I think on this set is so committed to telling the story of One Piece and doing it justice. So whether we're talking about the actors or our set decorators or the set builders, whether we're talking about the cinematography, there is every element of this, costumes, props, every little detail goes into the world building, which makes everything feel that much more real and that much more grounded, even though a lot of these characters in these scenarios are larger than life. There is a level of charm that if you've read the manga, or probably if you've watched the anime, you are familiar with when it comes to One Piece. And it's something that captures you, I think, as early as Chapter 1 for me. It really captured me. I can't even put it into words. There's just something about it. It gives you this warm fuzzy in your gut that makes you feel good. And I was impressed. I feel like this adaptation perfectly captured that element of the story. Now, of course, there are pros and cons to reworking something as big as One Piece. There's going to be some things that are going to work better, and there's going to be some things that are not going to work as well. And I think everyone's also going to have their own personal takes on what they prefer in the live action, or what they prefer in the manga, or what they prefer in the anime. For me, for example, I personally felt that Zoro's origin hit me a lot more in the manga, and I think it's the way that it was framed and a little bit of the way that that story is showcased. The story is still the same. They didn't really change anything per se, but it's just what they show, or in this case, what they don't show. And that might be because they just wanted to maybe maintain a little bit more of an air of mystery around Zoro's past, especially as we're going to have Tashigi probably coming in season 2. So I understand maybe that's what they wanted to do, or it could be a sensitivity thing where there are certain things they didn't want to show because, you know, it's Netflix and this is live action, and there's just certain limitations that might come with that. However, I also liked some things more in the live action in comparison to the manga. For example, when we are at the Baratier in the manga, we mostly are facing Don Krieg. And yet, in the live action, Don Krieg is a very small cameo. They also still made him look exactly like Don Krieg. All of the elements are there. All of the boxes are ticked. Perfect adaptation, but they let him go as soon as he's basically introduced, killing him off with Mihawk. And I loved that. I thought it was amazing. I love that Mihawk also gets to have that moment, and really that the Baratier becomes more about Sanji and Zeph and Mihawk versus Zoro, which ultimately is a way cooler fight. It's way more interesting. Sorry to the fans of Don Krieg, but I'm sure there are many other people out there that read the manga that laughed when Don Krieg was introduced and immediately killed off and thought it was funny. I know I laughed aloud. I thought it was brilliant. Really, though, the heart and soul of One Piece, I think, is the crew. And I think that's really well maintained. And when I talk about the crew, I'm not talking about any crew. I'm, of course, talking about the Straw Hats. I love how, as we go along with the story and we get our crew together here, we get to see how everybody invests more and more in each other, trusts each other more and more, and how that helps each individual character also come into their own as a young person and grow and change and believe in themselves. It's like through them believing in each other, they learn how to believe in themselves more. And it's really beautiful. And I think that's a really important part to the story. And even though not everyone gets along all the time, obviously, we already have the little budding feud between Sanji and Zoro that I love. But it's not really about the fact that you always agree with your friends and the people that you love. It's about that you still always respect and believe in them no matter what, even when you don't get along. And that is something that I've always loved about the Straw Hats, is that they just have this amazing connection to each other. And really what One Piece is about going after your dreams, believing in yourself, and freedom. The freedom to do as you want, live your life as you want. That's what piracy is always represented to me, and that's clearly a very important part of Pirates for Oda as well, which you see in the manga and you also see in this show. And I think that is a very important theme to One Piece, and it's something that is beautifully captured in the live action adaptation. We really see it through the spirit of Luffy, and I think the most important thing about this adaptation for it to work was that they needed to have the perfect Luffy. And I gotta say, I think that we are absolutely blessed to have Iñaki Godoy as our Luffy, because he is perfect. And really, One Piece does not work if you don't have the right Luffy. Luffy is the centerpiece, the protagonist, and the heart of this story. And he is not an easy character to cast because he is chaotic, but there are reasons why Luffy does what he does. It's interesting because on paper, Luffy really does seem like a dumb goofball, but when you get to know the character more, there's so much more to him than that, and this show clearly understands that. And that's important for making sure that everyone that watches your show falls in love with a character like Luffy. Which, I mean, maybe not for everyone they will. And Luffy isn't necessarily my favorite character, but I do love Luffy. I think he's great. My favorite character is actually Coby. That's right, Cabin Boy Coby. And what I love about what we did with Coby in this season, I thought we did such justice to the character because we actually get even more Coby in the show. In the manga, there is these little vignettes where we get to follow along Coby's journey into the Marines and him befriending Helmeppo and how their friendship kind of evolves and comes to be. And Garp is there. All of that stuff is still happening, but it's just vignettes. Whereas here, they actually have Coby's story running parallel to Luffy's story. And while Coby's going on and becoming a Marine, Luffy is learning how to become the captain of the Straw Hats, so their stories are almost mirroring one another, running parallel, even though they're in totally different lanes. And the cool thing about that is that we also get Garp as the connective tissue between those two worlds, which I know we have the reveal of Garp being Luffy's grandfather a lot earlier, and so that was kind of spoiled for me, I guess, in the live action, but I'm not even mad about it because I think it works a lot better to create this connective tissue between Coby's story, where Garp is the role model and the father figure, and Luffy's story, where Garp is his grandfather. But it also serves as a narrative core or through line for all of season 1, so that season 1 feels like this neat package, this fully realized story in one season, where everything is connected and it's not just a series of adventures that happen one after the other. There is one thread that connects everything. And that was something that I absolutely loved about season 1. And then, of course, there's the way that it ends, which I thought was really sweet. This idea of Luffy getting his wanted poster, finally having the biggest bounty in the East Blue. So proud of him. And then we also get to go back and revisit all of the characters we met on our journey, all of these important characters like Kaya and Zeph, and even Makino. Everyone always forgets about my girl Makino. So when they showed her again, I was like, you know what? Absolute cinema. Everyone gets this little reaction to Luffy's poster and we get to revisit everyone, and then they wrap it off with the best little tease for season 2, which is who else gets the poster? Smoker. And I am so excited to see what they do with this character in season 2. I've seen the trailers. I'm literally going to finish this review right now and then start season 2, so I cannot wait. If you would also like to watch along with me, you can do so here on my channel as a member on my Golden Fang Gang tier. You get access to a ton of members-only video content that I put up for you guys, including my reactions, which are kind of like commentary tracks that you can watch along with, or you can also watch along with me over on my Patreon. I'm going to be renaming all my tiers on Patreon, so if you want to check that out, I will have more reaction content for you up there, and that's where the full reaction will be. So watch along with me. I cannot wait to watch season 2. And yeah, season 1, should you watch it? Heck yes, you should. Especially, I think it's really good if you've never seen One Piece before, but even if you are someone that loves the manga, there's so much here to love. There was so much care that they put into crafting this season for us as fans, and I think there's lots of little things for you to enjoy along the journey if you're familiar with it. That's all I have for this one, friends. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Let me know your thoughts on season 1 down in the comments below, and until next time, as always, stay nerdy. Bye! And if you missed my previous videos on One Piece, check that out over here.